Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, imagine you were going about your days feeling happy, hopeful, and overwhelmed. But your family are looking at you through the lens of something that happened more than 20 years ago. They're looking at your behaviour like something's off. Without your knowledge, a call is made. That call results in 2 police officers coming to your door where they're telling you that you're going to be going to a psychiatric institution where you'll be committed, diagnosed, and medicated against your will. You go willingly with the police. You've got nothing to hide. You've not committed a crime. Everything will be explained when you get there. When you arrive to that institution, you tell the doctors your story, but they're not listening. They're hearing you, but they're not listening. They meet you perhaps one time, and they've already decided that you've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. One time, and you've now got a psychiatric label that's stigmatizing. How would you feel?
We will prove beyond any reasonable doubt that this medical report is inaccurate and highly prejudicial, and that this woman was falsely diagnosed of a mental illness that was not present.
As of 2005, someone would have to be a danger to themselves, others, or property in order to be involuntarily committed.
So some examples of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are: everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. And everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression.
V62.8 religious or spiritual problem. This category can be used when the focus of clinical attention is a religious or spiritual problem. There is a spiritual part of us, and it is often out of awareness, but it is often what drives who we are, what makes our direction in life, what makes our purpose, what makes our meaning. And we've identified a way to understand how this spiritual experience is organized psychologically, and we've developed methods that can actually speak to it, address it, and promote what we refer to as spiritual awakening. Anna Biltmore had a spiritual experience. Anna Biltmore did not have a bipolar disorder.
Anna had a spiritually transformative experience that had the opportunity to have been treated with no medication and not even needed a day in hospital. But Anna was on that hospital ward for 11 days, given a stigmatizing diagnosis of bipolar disorder, and treated with at least 3 different medications to show the world the importance of educating medical professionals on spiritually transformative experiences that are in the DSM. Psychiatrists can use this, they're not using it. Why are they not using it? This is a question we need to find out. Is it because it doesn't result in a medical bill? We've heard from Dr. Kavanagh that if you are correctly given the V code 6289, you could walk out of hospital in less than a day and be given a 0 medical bill. We need to question why that's not happening. Now it's up to us to decide. Who are we going to put our trust in when we go through a period of crisis or pain and suffering?
I met Anna through a friend of mine that met her and asked if I would meet with Anna to discuss her life story.
Why would you trust her, given that she was actually put in a psychiatric institution and diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
So you learn to read people, you learn to know who's telling you the truth or not. And I didn't see anything that she was telling me that came from a dishonest person. I did hear somebody that needed help to try to tell her story. That I was getting.
And felt that she was directly in contact with Wall Street and had a big business. I understand you met Stephen Feldstein, who was Anna's sponsor on Wall Street, on...
When she said, I was just here in Wall Street, I just gave a presentation on mental health, they called her delusional with visions of grandeur. No one ever called me. No one ever contacted me. No one ever checked if she was telling the truth. So they sent her to Bergen Medical Center, they stuffed lithium down her throat. They were making her catatonic in a cage while she was trying to change the world.
Anna is you and me. Anna represents the thousands of people across the world who have been committed against their will, ignored, diagnosed, and medicated for telling the truth. What we are here to ask is how many people around the world have found themselves in Anna's shoes? How many people have gone through a spiritually transformative experience yet are being treated like criminals, maybe worse than criminals?
If this happened to you, it's happened to thousands of others, not hundreds, thousands, and perhaps more than that. You're the one who's going to stop this from happening again. From now on, you are a spy in the house of crazy.
She did not have her day in hospital court in 2005 as required by law, but she is having her day in court now, not just for herself, but for all of the innocent victims who had their rights taken away from them with forced medication and institutionalized against their will.
How do you know who is sane and who is insane? Why do so many who experience manic also talk of God so intimately? Did you ever consider that manic was close to the experience of spiritual attunement? What if you found yourself opening up to a beautiful spiritual experience only to be locked away and labeled crazy? This true story is replicated around the globe for thousands of years.
I was hospitalized 6 times involuntarily against my will. Smacked the label of bipolar 1 on me, which led to all sorts of trauma and pain. And when I was hospitalized, there was very little to no exploration of the spiritual dimensions of my experience. Initially, I was diagnosed with substance-induced psychosis, then schizoaffective, then bipolar 1, then bipolar 2, and then I just stopped paying attention to the labels.
And so when I came back into the hospital, I received the worst treatment I could have ever received. I was over-medicated. I had chemical restraints. So they poured all sorts of drugs into me. I couldn't tell up or down, night or day. We're not even people.
Have I gone to court? Yes, I've gone to court. I've gone to court starting in 2019. I'm waiting for a hearing date in the district court to hear the motion for reconsideration. And I'm waiting for SCOTUS to determine if they will hear my state asylum case.
I know not everybody's going to believe this, but I know that I ended up in the hospital 3 separate times because of side effects from these meds.
They were just like, no, you're mentally ill for the rest of your life. I said, this has got to be wrong. I feel like the current paradigm denies anything soulistic. And it's time for us to say, no, it's not enough. And frankly, it's, you know, if we want to get like constitutional about it, it is against, you know, I mean, people don't fight for their freedom of speech and freedom of religion enough.
I kind of see myself and others who have gone through similar experiences as urban shamans, because if you don't know, shamans are people in the tribe that have had altered experiences when they're usually very young.
Often when we think about altered states, people who are labeled with things like schizoaffective and schizophrenia, it's often as Malidoma Patrice, a shaman from South Africa, would refer to this as good news from another realm.
This case has put a spotlight on just how low the threshold can be to be committed to a psychiatric institution, diagnosed as mentally ill, and forcibly medicated.
The numbers of people getting forcibly hospitalized and forcibly treated has actually been rising dramatically for decades. In British Columbia, doubling. In Ontario, doubling. In California, 30-day detentions tripled. Child detainees tripled. In Colorado, doubling. Nevada, doubling. Indiana, doubling. Florida, doubling.
In order to involuntarily commit someone, which is a euphemism for psychiatric imprisonment, the state has to prove by clear and convincing evidence that as a result of mental illness, the person is a danger of serious harm to himself or themselves or others, or so disabled that they are unable to survive safely in freedom. And even if so, they have to prove that there's no less restrictive alternative.
When I was a teenager, I was in the mental health system several times. One of the main times was as a troubled college student. I was a working class kid going to Harvard. I encountered a lot of mental and emotional problems. I want people to know that, many of us have been through this, have been through these heavy duty labels. I used peer support. I used nutrition, exercise, spirituality, nature, counseling. I used all of these methods and many more for my own personal recovery. And it's an ongoing process. I think to be human, we are all wrestling with these overwhelming issues of being alive and existing. So we're all using all of these methods to be able to give back. I think that's the ultimate recovery, is to be able to help others.
We organized ourselves around a narrative that told us that the pathology of schizophrenia, the pathology of the causes of schizophrenia, the causes of depression, and really other disorders were due to chemical imbalances in the brain. And that's a story that tells you need to take your medication, and you need to take it forever, really, because you have to counterbalance this thing. And the tragedy is, it's not true.
49% of Americans have reported having a significant spiritual or religious experience that changed their worldview. Very often, they're very difficult to describe, and when you do try to describe these experiences, you cannot convey the actual experience.
I, like many other clients, I start thinking that I was crazy, and that's the problem, right? Because there's no venue of conversation, because this hasn't been normalized, because it isn't okay to talk about this topic. You start thinking there's something wrong with you, and I think that's the problem. Is that myself and many of my clients, because there isn't a welcoming conversation on this topic, you feel isolated, you feel alone, and you feel like you're crazy even without anybody telling you you're crazy.
Anna has brought this case so we can see she is just the tip of the iceberg here. There are thousands of people who have walked in Anna's shoes, who are being medicated, mistrusted, not honoured, when they should be able to share what they're going through without fear of being branded ill, mentally ill, with a diagnosis that they will carry through to their lives. Medications they don't need that can also potentially harm them.
And I remember praying and calling out to God. I just said, take this pain away, take this fear away. I have no idea how I'm going to function.
I'm Joshua Roberts,
with my master's,
CEO of Inspired Mind.
And literally, this is the moment.
Also presenter with the nation's largest
introduce served on recorded temple.
This can happen to you and you and even you.
But are we going to put our hands in the lives of doctors, where we've seen what can happen to Anna Biltmore? Or are we going to put our trust into something bigger than ourselves? Perhaps we need to look at the US judicial court system for the answer to this. For it is in God that we trust. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I won't shed thy tears. just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me, yeah. Stand by me. Stand by me whenever you're in trouble. Want to stand by me.